When I find myself in native forest, I'm hurled like 500, 1,000 years into the past. And I tell people to pause and recognize that you're entering into a very special realm. Let your intentions be felt and wait for a response. The word Mālama means to care for. Many of the plants and animals that grow here are found nowhere else on Earth, and if we lose them here, we lose them everywhere. Ohia lehua is the dominant tree. It is absolutely essential to the life of many, many of the species that live in the forests up there. Our native forests are being flooded out by non-native species, and you can do something about it. Pu'u Ohia, the hill that we're on, was once covered with ohia forest, and then the bamboo moved in and pretty much crowded everything else out. When you look at an ohia tree surrounded by bamboo, you notice that all of the bamboo around it, there's not a single living thing growing there. But when you break through that bamboo into the richness of the native Hawaiian forest, the difference is palpable. Suddenly you're surrounded by so many different textures of leaves and flowers, and the idea of richness and balance immediately settles upon you. Mālama is an important part of our relationship with the Aina, with the land. Mālama, in the sense of reforestation, is restoring the health of the native ecosystems of these islands. We're coming up to my favorite spot of this trail, where every single tree above us is native. So when you're restoring the biology of a place, you're restoring the culture of a place. You're doing a good thing. I think just ohia as you go into there. In Hawaiian thought, every living thing is a physical manifestation of your ancestors and of the Hawaiian gods. The more that you know about those kinds of connections, the more you realize that what you're doing is rebuilding a community in which you are a part.
Learn how you can Mālama Hawaii at gohawaii.com/Mālama.
What a great video that was, and learning more about sustainability and reforestation on the island of Oahu, but throughout all our Hawaiian islands. And how lucky are we today to have from our video, our very first interview of our sessions, Mr. Sam Ohugan III with the Hawaii Nature Conservancy based on the island of Oahu. How are you, Sam? Aloha.
Hi, Kai. Aloha, Kainoa. How are you? I'm
So
good.
I'm great. Thank you. It's great to have you. It's such an honor and a privilege. We want to just kind of jump into it. And so maybe you can tell us more, our audience more. What does Mālama mean for you personally? The word Mālama, the value of Mālama.
Well, being born and raised in Hawaii is such a beautiful place. And when you see that place in any way damaged, you want to take care. You want to help heal that damage. And so, when we saw how invaded that section of forest was up in Manoa Cliffs and
Right.
what kind of help it needed, it was just a natural thing to want to be able to go and contribute to the efforts to make that place as beautiful as it can be. And Hawaii, it's so unique here. There's so many things that are seen only here and nowhere else on Earth, that there is no end to the needs to take care of this place.
Right. So when visitors come to Hawaii, what kind of things can you suggest that they get involved in? We have our Mālama program, but with Nature Conservancy or any other things that you can think of, or maybe in general, what are some best practices that you think people can do when they come to Hawaii to Mālama, our place?
Well, certainly one of the things is that global rule of having as light a footprint as possible. Whenever you go to a place, you don't want to be responsible for making that place worse than it was when you showed up. And there are so many ways to make things better than
Right.
when you showed up. And there are lots of organizations. Nature Conservancy would be one of them, but many efforts are going on. Sometimes in protected areas like Hanauma Bay
Mhm.
or other places in the islands, both land and sea. And it is a matter of searching those out. Once you start looking around for them, they're not that hard to find. All you have to do is like go to Google and say volunteer opportunities in taking care of the lands and seas in Hawaii, and you'll probably find some really good options to follow.
Well, within Nature Conservancy, since that's where you work and that's what you represent, statewide, what kinds of things can visitors potentially participate in to be able to give back?
Well, a lot of the Nature Conservancy preserves are way up in the mountains. A lot
Okay.
of them are inaccessible except by helicopter or a really long hike. However, some of them are visitable. If you're on Molokai, then hiking up to the Nature Conservancy's Kamako Preserve, which I consider like the gem in our preserve system. It's
Ah,
entirely accessible by the public as long as you have a four-wheel drive vehicle. That might be the
okay.
thing to find on Molokai. But once you're up there, there's trails up there and wonderful things to see. The staff occasionally engages in volunteer weed control projects or the like, but for the most part, that place is in such good shape that one can just go up there and enjoy it and get an example of what a place that has been taken good care of looks like.
Right. So since your Mālama video, if you will, was specifically speaking to reforestation, would you mind sharing with us a little bit more in your own words, instead of the beautiful marketing video piece we created with you, but in your own sort of raw definition or thoughts, like why is reforestation so important for Hawaii?
Well, the Hawaii of today is quite different from the Hawaii of 500 years ago.
Right.
500 years ago, native forests probably went from the summits of the islands all the way down to the ocean. There are stories of birds that feed off of the nectar of native plants, flying up into the mountains when the pohia, like the tree behind me, were in full bloom and drinking the nectar there. And then when it wasn't blooming up there, but there were nayo trees down at the ocean blooming, they would fly right down to the ocean and enjoy the nectar there. Now, if they flew down there, they might find, old sugarcane fields or maybe an industrial park or the like. So there's been a lot of changes, and undoing some of those changes is an important thing to do. For people to actually see the beautiful places like the image behind me,
Right.
sometimes it takes a long hike up into a mountain. And when you get above maybe 2,000 or 2,500 feet, you might see something as beautiful as this. But there are opportunities for us to create or recreate and restore forests of this kind down at lower elevations so that everyone can come up and see them.
Yeah, the diversity of the native forest was very telling. I remember because we were with you on that shoot and walking from the bamboo forest, which was nothing but bamboo, and then through that gate into the native forest. Can you speak to that diversity of a native forest versus an invasive forest?
Well,
Like how a
invasive,
visitor could tell the difference, sort of, maybe.
oh, sure. Invasive species are really good at dominating the vegetation.
Mhm.
They grow fast, they shade out everything. And so if you're ever in a forest in Hawaii that looks like there's only one kind of tree there
Yeah.
or one kind of plant that you're walking through, chances are that it's not a native plant. When
Wow.
you're up in native forest, there might be 25, 30, 50 different kinds of plants and
Sure.
ferns and mosses all around you, and none of them seem to dominate.
Yeah.
They're all living in this balance that evolved over millions of years in Hawaii.
So yeah, so our goal here in Hawaii now, our program Mālama Hawaii, working with our partners, really is to bring that balance back as best as we can, to minimize our footprint and to embrace Hawaii. So Sam, again, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you and your time and your energy and your mana'o, and you take care. Mahalo so much. Thank you.
Yeah, mahalo to you, Kainoa. Good to see you.
Aloha. Ahui ho.
Hui hou.